Hey everyone, what's going on? It's Excoundrel, aka your boy Wildrift Jesus. Kind of looking like it right now, I'm not gonna lie. The hair, it's growing so long and the parting down the middle. I just either look like an 80s rock thing or Jesus. Anyway, oh, it's getting in my hair. In my mouth. Anyway, we've got an awesome video. Because not only is it the first video I posted in about a millennia, it is also a video that is highlighting some of the most insane changes Wildrift has had in quite some time. Now, before we get on to the discussion about this patch, I do want to point you towards the sponsor of today's video, which is wildstats.gg. I will put a link down below in the description which you guys can click to go to the site and check out all things Wildrift stats. Now, I would thoroughly recommend you do. The reason I took this sponsorship, and I don't take that many sponsorships on the channel, but these guys hopefully will be appearing fairly frequently. The reason I chose Wildrift Stats and was happy to integrate it is because I use this tool all the time. Not only for assessing the meta, it really is one of the biggest influences in my tier lists. And I think it, I usually kind of go Master Plus, and I take a look at what's happened over the last 14 days. I go to one of the lanes. I say, oh, let's see what's going on in my lane, which is the solo lane. Boom, Darius, highest pick rate, got about a 50% win rate. You actually can't see Darius. Darius, Set, Garen, Malphite, all the stats about everything. Anyway, yeah, loads of stats that I use on this website to help create tier lists. And it's a really good way to get a read on what is working in your lane across whatever servers that you're playing on. Right now, I've got the European stats up. What I would really love, I kind of mentioned it before, is I would really love an Emerald Plus button. I'm sure it wouldn't be too hard to do, but that would actually be really helpful if I could get an Emerald Plus button. So I know Master Plus is good, but actually to increase the sample size, it'd be really nice to have Emerald Plus, and then I could get a real breadth of the meta that's happening at the relatively high elos. Anyway, really recommend that you go and check this out, guys. Awesome website. Let's get straight into the patch notes now. Boom. So, as you may have guessed, this one is a bloody long one. Really long. Which means I'm probably going to be pausing and taking time while recording this video because, my God, it's long. So, some of the biggest changes ever in this patch, honestly. 3.1, you've probably seen some teasers. You've probably seen, as part of the patch 3.1 preview that went out, it's got a lot of stuff. Firstly, the new champions, of course, Karma and Shen. Super excited about Karma. I didn't think I would be excited about Karma, but I am excited about Karma, primarily because she's had a big change in the way that she's played. They've moved her old ultimate to her passive from the PC, and they've given her a new ultimate that's kind of like an Orianna ultimate. It's really cool. Karma's got crap tons going on for her in Wildrift, and I'm mega excited to see her played. I think she's going to be really cool and very useful as well. In general, here's a blanket way of how Excoundrel decides whether a champion's going to be good. Does it have a lot of CC? Yes, it's good. That's generally how I decide. So Karma's got a decent amount of CC in her kit, probably has a high damage output, very excited about her. We have Shen, who is very in line with the current Shen that we have in PC, but again, cross-mapping, lots of CC, can go tanky and also can probably build more attack damage. Very excited about Shen. So I think both of these champions are going to be high tier. I think both of these champions are going to be very hotly contested, and I think they're probably going to be sitting in the bans when we jump in. I'll do some more videos on those guys though, maybe tonight. If I'm feeling up to staying up, have a few coffees. We'll see how we go. I'm old, really old, not that old, kind of old, and I've got 2 kids, so I'm going to bed at 8 o'clock every night right now, which is why you're not getting videos. I'm waking up at 6, getting my son to nursery by 8, which involves a whole host of wrestling him into clothes, doing work, which is now taking up a lot of my time, and then logging off from work, collecting Rupert, cooking everyone dinner, and then going to sleep because I just feel like I'm going to pass out. And maybe playing Lost Ark a little bit, but I'm not even getting to play Lost Ark that much. Anyway, new tabs. We got articles, patch notes, game news, community events. So you can read the patch notes in the app now. That's amazing. And also the videos. I'm sure they're going to have esport links. I'm sure you're going to probably see Hell's Devil in the videos. You're probably going to maybe see me if I get more consistent with my video uploads again. Boom. I'm very excited about that one. Ranked Season 5 is going to begin next week. Or no, this week. That's Wednesday, 26th of March. 26th of March is Saturday. So it's going to begin on Saturday. I'm not getting to master this tier. I'm lazy. I've decayed. I'm somewhere in Diamond. I haven't played enough. But, you know, I'm happy. I don't care. I hit master this tier this season. It's fine. Ranked store. We're adding some new goodies in the ranked store to help you spend your hard-earned ranked coins on just stuff. Cool. New wild pass stuff. New modes. Here we go. Exciting. So the thing that we talked about in the preview was the Elemental Rift. They're going to be able to play and test their first version of Elemental Rift. It's a limited time game mode, which is basically normal Wild Rift, but Elemental Drakes and the map changes. Essentially, I would encourage you to play it where you can, mostly because the feedback is going to be pretty useful for how it ends up being the final product that gets integrated into the overall game. Once the second dragon dies, the map will change and new unique gameplay opportunities will open up. Mountain Rift, you get new terrain along with defensive walls in the dragon pit. You're getting, in Infernal Rift, it's burning away stuff, so terrain's opening up and you're getting more access to things. And Ocean Rift spawns more brushes across the map with some extra honey fruit. Cloud Dragon got killed. Rest in peace, Cloud Dragon. Mountain Soul, and slaying each dragon grants your team some bonuses, but once you slay 3 dragons, you're going to get a powerful soul. Mountain Dragon increases your armor and magic resist. The soul grants you a shield after not taking damage for a short while. Infernal Dragon grants your team bonus attack damage and ability power. Infernal Soul creates explosions around your abilities and attacks, dealing bonus adapted damage in a circle around your target. This by the way, has always been one of the most hotly contested dragon souls on PC. I really don't think that's going to change. An Ocean Soul restores health over time, or Ocean Dragon restores health over time, and Ocean Soul restores more health when dealing damage to enemies. So that's very interesting. I think that's a change. That's not the same as PC, which is going to be kind of cool because it makes your team fighting kind of OP, and also I guess makes lifesteal kind of OP. So it's gonna make your team fighting really strong, which is very cool actually, and that's also probably going to be a very, very hotly contested soul as well. And finally, we've revamped the powerful Elder Dragon, making it closer to the League's PC version. Once the Dragon's soul has been taken by a team, the Elder Dragon will be up for grabs. It will offer its game-ending true damage effect and execute enemies when they drop to a low health. Basically, Elder's going to be really insane, and especially because Wild Rift is so teamfight heavy and very burst damage heavy, oh my god, you need Elder Dragon. I do encourage you to test this out though, guys. It's not going to be in the main Wild Rift game mode for the time being, because I think they want to get it perfect before bringing it to your ranked experience. And that's my worry. As a separate queue, I don't know whether enough people are going to test this. However, I encourage you. I might run some Elemental Rift playtests in my Discord maybe, if I ever get time to do anything that isn't looking after kids. But by the way, I love my kids. I'm just joking. I absolutely love my boys to pieces, but they do take up a lot of time. Skins. Some skins are coming. Accessories. Stuff. Events. They're there. Champion changes. That's what we care about here on this channel. I'm a hard data kind of guy. Don't like that fluffy art stuff. I do like fluffy art stuff. It's very nice. Ashe has been quietly outperforming. Has she really? I can't believe that. Ashe has been quietly outperforming her fellow. I'm sure in terms of their data, it's true. I mean, Ashe is one of those champions that has a lot of really good niches. I think a lot of people have figured out that Ashe Lulu is like really insane. And I'm sure Ashe is one of those champions that also kind of crushes mid to low elos. And reducing her volley AD ratio by 10%, which speaks to me that actually probably not something that, you know, volley is not one of those things that seems really oppressive in high elo, so it's definitely something that to me feels like it's more tailored towards like mid to low elos. It's a very minimal change overall. No one's picking Ashe because of the damage that she does with volley. I can assure you, people are picking Ashe because of her scaling ability and the control that she provides. Volley is in my eyes, that volley is not really about the damage as the game progresses. Volley is much more about the fact that it provides an AoE slow, which is kind of cool and useful later into the game. Blitzcrank's getting like a mini rework to an extent. I think they did this on PC, but I haven't really kept up with PC League for a while. Armor going down and armor scaling going down. So making him slightly easier to kill, basically. An overdrive. First cast grants a movement speed increase, decaying to 10% over 1.5 seconds. The total duration of the cast is 2.5 seconds. There is a 1 second cooldown before you can cast this ability again. So now, overdrive, you just get a speed boost for the first one. It's a smaller speed boost, but you get a speed boost for the first cast. If you want to go all in, second cast gains a ridiculous speed boost, decaying to 25% over 1.5 seconds. So you can technically get a 3-second total speed boost if you time it correctly. And when he's slow, when overdrive ends, Blitzcrank is slowed for 1.5 seconds. So he's still slowed actually after the first cast, but he's slowed by 33%. So he's kind of slow, but not ridiculously slow. If you do it second time, Blitzcrank gets slowed by 99% for 2 seconds. I can't stress how much 99% basically means you're rooted. Essentially, you're gonna feel Lulu's Glitter Lance is 99% slow. So imagine how slow you feel when you get hit by Glitter Lance. That's what's gonna happen if you get hit with this second slow on Blitzcrank's overdrive ability. However, this ability to me now feels like it's almost providing yourself with a mini Righteous Glory built into your kit. You're designed to either get into position for an insane hook, or it's designed for Blitzcrank to literally run into the enemy team and punch someone. And if he is then focused, he can then use his silence around the enemy team. And he's supposed to be tanky, right? So he's supposed to take a bit of damage. If they suddenly start, going all in on Blitzcrank, it might be a good thing because your team can follow up. But of course, you've got to make sure your team's on the same page before you use this ability. Love it though. Think this is something that I think could make Blitzcrank a very, very interesting pick, because it's now. It's given Blitzcrank an angle that isn't just, do I land my hook or do I not land my hook? And I think for Blitzcrank, he sorely needed that. This is almost like a hard engage tool for him, in the right circumstance. Like a 3-second speed boost is really nice. I'm interested to see whether supports, especially at the high elo, decide to pick up Blitzcrank, because we're in a very decent enchanter meta right now. I know there is a bit of a resurgence of things like engaged supports like Alistair, but we're in a decent enchanter meta right now. With things like Nami and Lulu being still really popular, and this is what Blitzcrank is traditionally pretty decent into. So that's cool. I like that. Fiora, her lunge damage is going down by 10 base damage at every rank. Personally don't think that's enough to make Fiora not picked, or even S tier, because for Fiora, 10 damage is definitely something, but realistically it's the lunge plus grasp proc, and it's the lunge plus grasp plus vital proc that really is quite obnoxious to deal with in laning phase. And I've always maintained that it's the range of her lunge that's the problem, not massively about the damage. So I don't think this is really going to shift Fiora, in my opinion. I think she's still going to remain very good. And if you're a Fiora player, it kind of sucks. You're losing 10 base damage, but in the grand scheme of things, it really doesn't mean that much, in my opinion. Galio. Galio is getting a base damage decrease on Hero's Entrance by about 100 at the 3rd rank, by scaling that way. Basically starts at 50, goes up to 100. But they're giving him a massive AP ratio increase, which is pretty crazy. So to get 100 damage back with 100%, with the AP ratio changes, I think you need about 300 AP. So you need to have a pretty beefy build. I think 300 AP is probably in the realms of Rod of Ages plus Rabadon's Death Gap, and at that point you're probably doing more damage with the ultimate than you were before. But of course, you need to get to that spike for it to be relevant. It's obviously a relatively decent nerf to Galio's early game, and a relatively decent nerf to support Galio. However, full AP Galio in the late game is probably going to get some benefit from this, and you're probably going to feel a little more impactful in terms of the damage that you actually do with your ultimate. Okay, back into the action. They're nobbing my boy Garen. He's getting knobbed. Judgment base damage coming down again, which is actually overall decreasing the judgment damage by about, what is that? 16 at all ranks. 16 at all ranks. Not even giving him a pass in the early game. Legitimately just 16 at all ranks. Demacian Justice base damage is coming down. The non-primary target damage, so the AoE damage that it does, is also coming down. The bonus AD ratio is going up based on 1.2% targets and the missing health. Right, let's do some quick math here. 0.8% of targets. The bonus AD ratio is multiplied by 0.8% of the target's missing health. I'm working this out, guys. Give me a second. Bonus AD ratio, 0.8% of target's missing health. Oh, I see. So it's going up to, well, it's going up to point. That's got to be 0.08% of target's missing health, right? And then it's going to 0.12, because there's no way it'd go from 0.8 to 0.12, because that's got to be one of the most ridiculous nerfs I've ever seen in my life. That's what I'm getting confused about. So technically, my boy Garen's getting a big old nerf hammer, especially his tank build, again, is getting nerfed. However, if you go Black Cleaver, Sterex, Gauge Garen, you're probably going to do a bit more damage with your ultimate, especially if it is really used for an execute. However, you are losing base damage, of course, in the late game. I think we'd need to test, but I still think Garen's going to be fine. I think the Black Cleaver, Sterex, Gauge Garen build is still going to be, you know, a pretty solid build path. 16 total base damage on his judgment is annoying, but not the worst thing in the world. And I really need to really feel what this actually like translates to in terms of damage output, because it's technically getting a 50% buff because it's getting a 0.6. No, sorry, it's getting a 0.4% or 0.04% increase in the scaling. So to me, it says that if you're going for AD Garen, you might find that your Demacian Justice will do a bit more damage, but everything else is kind of getting nerfed. So essentially, Tank Garen is definitely getting hit, but if you're playing this this Black Cleaver Sterex Gauge build, I think you're probably going to find that you'll either go even, or your ultimate might even end up doing a little bit more damage. Would need to test though. I'm not entirely certain what this means specifically, but hey, I will test it. But without a shadow of a doubt, Tank Garen's getting hit. So if you're a fan of Tank Garen, sad boy hours. Graves has been struggling to make meaningful impact in the jungle, so we're basically making it so that his first ability clears the jungle more quickly. Fair enough. I think Graves is supposed to be a farmer. He's supposed to be a farming jungler, right? And so, you know, that's his strength. He's not a ganker. He's not like supposed to be some sort of early game monster like Lee Sin. He is a farming jungler. So, you know, I think this is a fair change, and I think it plays towards Graves' supposed strengths. Irelia. She's been dominating games in higher level, but while struggling to find her footing in lower level games. Makes sense, because Irelia is an incredibly mechanically difficult champion to play, I'd say. We're reducing the cooldown on her Blade Surge to make missing a reset less punishing, and granting her better scaling to make mastering her kit more accessible. To change that, we're taking away some of her early game power. Okay, so her base attack speed scaling in the early game is going down, but she's getting a massive buff to attack speed scaling in the late game. And Blade Surge cooldown is coming down by 2 seconds in the late game, 2 seconds at every rank. She's just going to be better everywhere. She's just going to be better all the time. This 2 second decrease, I mean, it doesn't mean that much, but the 2 second decrease in the late game, I mean, it just means if you miss with the ability haste that you're probably going to have, it's going to be crazy. Like, her late game scaling is insane now, I think. Yeah. Yeah, I just think she's going to be better. I mean, look, this is basically, my eyes is basically saying we don't like the level 2 all-in that Irelia has, and we want to make that a little less powerful. However, her late game, I heard you guys like late game Irelia, so we're just going to make her even more strong in the late game. And actually, I think that this 5% increase on base attack speed is pretty nutty, plus a cooldown reduction of 2 seconds at all ranks on Blade Surge, especially in the late game where actually hitting a stun in the late game is a little difficult. You know, you'll find that in a team fight, if you're chasing someone down, it's going to be much easier to find that executing blow. So Irelia definitely going to be, I think, relatively strong, and you know, especially in the mid lane still. I think she's still got a lot of bad matchups in the Baron lane. You know, things like Darius and Garen still do really well into Irelia, but like the mid lane, this is nice for Irelia. You know, she scales up quite nicely here. I don't know when the break point is of this scaling. I'd need to find out. But if it's somewhere around like level 6 or level 7, then happy days for Irelia, realistically. And I'm back. Sorry, work. Just like half an hour later, back on the patch notes. Where the hell was I? Right, Jhin. Now, this is an interesting change, okay? So, Jhin feels a little underwhelming in the late game compared to his PC counterpart. Like, in PC, Jhin's known as a bit of a late game monster, but in wildrift that hasn't always been the case. So specifically, I think they're referring to the damage that his 4th shot does based on missing health. They are moving it in line with his PC version, which caps at 25% at max level, but it caps at 25% at level 11 in wildrift. So this means his ability to execute on his 4th shot is going to be significantly more impactful than it is right now. And this is most impactful because this means that in Jhin's general team fighting capabilities, he is now going to be much more threatening to low HP targets. And I think now going to be much more in line with where he should be, especially in terms of his late game power and damage dealing potential. So very excited. I think this is a relatively big change for Jhin. There are also some big changes coming for Jhin later, which I will show you. But overall, I think Jhin, based on some of the changes here and some of the item changes, you could be looking at a very high tier AD carry again. I don't know if you remember about a year ago, probably more than a year ago, actually. Jhin was considered like S tier all the time. This might bring Jhin back in line. I saw this change from Masti and I was like, I can't work out what has massively happened here. So, because they haven't shown me what it's changed from, which is a bit weird, and it's difficult to tell. Masti becomes untargetable and strikes up to 4 enemies near his target, dealing blah 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 damage hit by 4 strikes. I think that's the same, right? They've highlighted this, but I think it's the same. New effect. If there are no other targets, this ability can strike the same enemy unit repeatedly, dealing 25% damage with each subsequent strike. So essentially, you would hit them for this first, and then you would deal 25% of that across 3 extra strikes. Quality of life change, making Alpha Strike not so permanently useless versus low numbers of targets. But specifically, also really good, you know, in smaller skirmishes as well, where you're actually going to get a bit more damage off, which is quite nice. Attacks reduce the cooldown of Alpha Strike by 1 second. It deals extra bonus damage to minions and monsters, and this ability can crit, dealing 60% bonus damage. So I'm assuming it's just the new effect that they've brought in here. Not many people play Critical Strike Master Yi because it's a little bit risky. So I'm assuming it's this damage here. You've got to also remember that this now will apply on-hit effects, I believe. So his on-hit effects are going to stack up more rapidly against a single target, which includes stuff like Wit's End and Blade of the Ruined King. So that's actually quite a nice little change for Master Yi, and I think will make him a little bit more threatening especially when chasing down targets 1v1. Very interesting change to Master Yi that, whilst it might not make him viable because it doesn't fix like his early game or whatever, it's definitely going to make him more threatening as a duelist, especially as the game progresses, and probably reduce the power spike level that he needs to get to actually be more threatening to 1v1 targets. So I'm kind of interested about this, and I think it's very cool. Nami. Does Alpha Strike apply on hit effects? Not entirely sure. Nami. In our last patch, blah, 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 blah. reducing the passive movement speed of her abilities, granting like movement speed to herself and to her allies. Whatever. It's a bit of a rubbish change, you know, for Nami players, but she's still going to be dominant in the laning phase, and I still think she's going to remain a relatively high tier support. I don't think this is massively going to kick Nami off the bus or anything. Riven's getting a minor shield duration increase on her Valor, which is quite cool because I feel like it was quite squishy and didn't really give her much time to negotiate. So yeah, I think just making it a little bit more forgiving in those trades in the laning phase, which, you know, I don't think is going to impact high-level players too much, but it is a small change that I think may help Riven be more palatable to lower skill players. Xin Zhao. 3 talent strikes, base damage is going up as the game progresses, and the cooldown is coming down by 1 second, which I think is the more impactful part here. Wind becomes lightning, the thrust damage is going up by a small amount in the late game. So basically they're saying his early game's still great, like it's just his mid to late game that we're a little worried about and the scaling on it. The cooldown reduction by 1 second on this is actually quite nice, because this is the most useful part of Xin Zhao's kit as the game progresses, in my opinion, apart from his ultimate. So I think that's a nice change, and may help him feel a little more viable. May help him feel a little bit more viable, basically, as the game progresses. Mostly because like just getting the extra cycles for CC is really good. Yasuo. The whirlwinds, so not the AoE spin, the targeted spin. They're increasing the speed of the whirlwind, and they're also increasing the range by a decent amount, actually. Yasuo I already think is already on the borderline of like extremely good, so I think that these are some good changes, and I think you'll find that Yasuo, I think these are maybe understated. I actually genuinely think these are understated changes, especially versus ranged matchups. This is like a way that Yasuo can get a little bit of chip damage in. It's a way that Yasuo can set up his ultimate, especially in those ranged matchups. So I think this is a relatively big change for Yasuo. Don't think it's going to suddenly make him OP, but, you know, those Yasuo one tricks, your very high tier Yasuo players, they're going to really, really enjoy this change, I think, because it's going to be harder to dodge the whirlwind, and it's going to travel further. So it's going to give you a bit more scope in dealing with ranged matchups. Zed can deal massive amount of damage by stacking his shadow slash with shadows. We are adding fall off damage, so this burst is more reasonable. Damage dealt by subsequent slashes after the first is down to 60%. So basically you can't use your shadow from your second ability and your shadow from your ultimate and just get a massive amount of damage off his shadow slash, you know, especially when you're stacking damage onto one target. You know, I still think Zed's going to be able to one-shot people with relative ease, and I think the use cases where people were able to stack shadow slash damage onto one target were relatively limited. So I think, you know, you're still going to see Zed getting a lot of one-shots. You're still going to see Zed being very powerful, but it's especially for just this is going to mostly affect the very, very high skill Zed players who are able to stack shadow slashes more reliably. They'll find that the damage drops down just a little bit, but still, I think Zed's still going to have a lot of one-shot potential. Explosive Minefield duration is coming down by 3 seconds. It's actually a really nice change because that was an obnoxiously long-lasting ability. And so I think that's actually a really nice change that will make Ziggs a little less annoying to play versus, but do I think this is going to make Ziggs not meta or really shift his position in the meta? No, not really. Like, Ziggs is picked for his long-range reliable damage, his zone control in team fights, his low cooldown ultimate, his ability to take towers like they're butter. There are still so many things that make Ziggs good that this is not going to suddenly make him not meta or kind of force him out. It's a nice change, and I can see them making slow, methodical changes, mostly because Ziggs is quite a popular champion. But I think, you know, this is not going to suddenly change Ziggs' position in the meta. It's just going to make him feel a little less annoying to play versus, because I find that minefield does last an obnoxiously long period of time. But, you know, for most Ziggs, they're clearing that minefield relatively quickly, pushing lanes. And in team fights, they're usually dropping it on someone's head anyway. They're very rarely using it as like... The only use case where I see this is going to really come through is if you're using Explosive Minefield as a zoning tool on choke points around objectives. Especially when you're looking at the... especially when you're looking at things like the dragon pits and the entrances to the jungle and stuff like that. But that's the biggest use case that I see that this being actually having an impact on. Earth changes, we don't care. I do care. Well, no, I don't play Earth. Sorry, I don't care. Black Cleaver, ability haste is coming down by 5. As most people have said, Black Cleaver is one of the most gold efficient items in the game. The ability haste dropped down by 5. Probably not going to make a huge amount of difference to people. It's still going to remain a very, in my opinion, very, very important item. Death's Dance is getting a bit of a rework. Instead of having health, that's getting changed to armor, and it's now building out of Chain Vest instead. The only drawback is you don't get the ability haste from Kindle Gem before you complete it, but that's not a huge thing. Essentially, they're making Death's Dance more specific against heavy AD comps, which is interesting because Death's Dance was kind of like the catch-all, kind of like bruiser, semi-damage item that you just put in your build as like a Fiora or a Riven, because it gave you a way to mitigate damage, but also health and lifesteal, which is great stats to have. So now it's getting armor specifically, and it's losing its health. It's actually a pretty big change, and also it's going to make it a little less like universally applicable, which is kind of what I think they're after with these changes. You're no longer getting physical vamp at all. Okay, I need to read this. Stores 35% of melee and 15% ranged of all post-mythical mitigation damage received, which is successfully taken as true damage over 3 seconds instead, dealing a third of the stored damage each second. Champion takedowns remove Ignore Pain's remaining store damage and heal you for 15% of your maximum health over 2 seconds. Basically, okay, I'm assuming Ignore Pain is like the buff or debuff name given to when you're taking damage over time, right? So champion takedowns remove that damage, and if you get a champion takedown in the middle of a team fight, you're going to suddenly get a big boon of HP coming your way. However, this item now kind of sucks if you don't get takedowns. And it no longer has physical vamp built into it, which means if you want physical vamp that doesn't rely on takedowns to get you HP back. Oh, it's building out Cool Fields Warhammer, that's why. You don't want to rely on takedowns to get your HP back. You're gonna have to build like Blade of the Ruin King or Bloodthirster. Now, of course, like Blade of the Ruin King's not great for Riven, and Bloodthirster is, I suppose. But it does mean that like the Triforce Death's Dance, like second items that you'd see on some builds, probably isn't going to be very useful now, or at least not as useful. Like, I think that the heal you for 15% of your maximum health over 2 seconds seems good, but for a lot of the people relying on the physical vamp, you're often getting that naturally through damage dealt anyway. You're getting slightly more damage reduction as melee. Was bleed physical damage or was bleed true damage? I can't remember what the original damage was on Death's Dance. Let me know if you know whether it was physical bleed damage or whether it was true damage. But regardless, I actually just think this item got significantly worse, and I'm struggling to find a situation apart from maybe as a late game addition to make a non-team fighting champion a little bit more palatable in team fight situations. But this item's just gone from what is going to be universally used to, in my opinion, relatively niche. Mostly because whenever you have a risk reward item, you like 3,000 gold for a risk reward item is a bit awkward when you could just build the lifesteal in the form of the Blade of the Ruin King or the Bloodthirster and actually feel like, you know, Bloodthirster gives you a shield, it gives you a load more AD, and gives you way more healing. Yeah, I just, unless there is some combos that come out with like Divine Sunderer, for instance, I just think this item's become less usable in general. Not a total fan of the changes, if I'm honest with you. Not a total fan of the changes. I understand why they did it, because I think they felt that bruisers were getting too much use out of this item. It was too good for them in most scenarios. It gave way too many like universally good stats, and so therefore it was just like an auto-include in builds, and they kind of want Death's Dance to be a more carefully thought about item. But I just don't see many scenarios where you'd spend 3,000 gold for this. Let me know what you think, though. Am I missing something here? Like, I'm not like, I don't know everything about everything. So, you know, if I'm missing something, please feel free to tell me. Dead Man's Plate. Movement speed. 100 movement stack has been dropped off. Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair enough. I think Deadman's Plate was just way too strong in general. Movement speed was too good. I mean, the problem is it's only 10 movement speed, which is a decent amount, but, you know, at the end of the day, it still feels a niche that not many other items do. And I still think, despite they're saying we're cutting back on some of the mobility the item offers, so it's not a must pick in every game, I think any mobility makes it a must pick in any game. You know, especially for tanks like Alistair, for instance. You know, I think the problem is that there isn't another item that I would want to replace this with right now, because even this was like, if this was like 20 movement speed, I mean, no, 20 still kind of sucks, but, you know, this is still, in my opinion, filling a niche that is almost impossible to replace. So I think I'm still probably building Deadman's Plate as a key item on supports, tanky supports, and even on some bruises in the Baron lane. Exciting item time. Divine Sunderer, a new one. Alternative to Trinity Force that should be an attractive option to many champions. While Trinity Force offers more attack speed and movement speed, Divine Sunderer will grant you more defensive stats, additional healing, and is cheaper as a cheaper item. From players that want to have a sheen effect in this build, that should give you a viable alternative to Trinity Force that will have you hit your power spike faster and provide more durability. And I will have you know now that people like Fiora, people like Darius, people like Nasus only build Trinity Force for the sheen passive. The other stats are actually less relevant to them. This is going to significantly boost the power level of a lot of champions in Baron lane, and also Ezreal potentially. A lot of champions in Baron lane that really value these stats and also only really wanted the sheen passive. Camille as well is another good example of another champion that's going to get a massive boon from this item. Builds from Sheen, Jerome's Fist, and Kindle Gem. 20 attack damage. So it's not a huge amount of attack damage. 400 health, 20 ability haste. Great stats. A lot of people love those stats. In fact, if anything, this is probably coming in as a great Death's Dance replacement, but better. A more offensive item. After using this ability, you basically get the Sheen passive. If the target is a champion, heal 4, 7% of the target's maximum health, and deal and a minimum heal equal to 90% of your base AD. So basically, a great duelist item, and also great tank shredding item. To be honest with you, it's not tank shredding item. Does better against the tanks as well. Oh, actually, no, it does deal percentage of your target's maximum health as bonus physical damage on hit. This plus Blade of the Roaring King is going to be really dirty. I'm expecting like this plus Blade of the Roaring King on some of the carries in the Baron lane. This is going to be an insane item, and it's going to make so many champions that were like already good, really good. I feel like this is going to be an obnoxious item. Build this item. First item on like Fiora, Darius even, Camille, maybe even Irelia, kind of. Irelia does look kind of like Triforce though. Nasus, like champions that didn't really care about like the attack speed that the Trinity Force provided, and instead are just much more looking to be a bit beefier, but also hit really hard. Great item. Really, really good item. Fimbulwinter. We're looking to make it a more viable item for more champions. We're changing the payoff for stacking mana to health, rather than ability haste and shifting Fimbulwinter's shield effect to a lower cooldown that can trigger from slows as well as immobilizes. Getting more ability haste. Grants ability haste equal to... Oh, grants bonus health equal to 8% of maximum mana and refunds 15% of all mana spent. That's actually pretty insane. Immobilizing or slowing an enemy champion consumes 3% of current mana. Nana. It consumes 3% of my current Nana? And grants a shield for 3 seconds, absorbing 100 to 200 plus 5% of current mana, increased by 80% if there's more than one enemy champion nearby. Okay, so basically, slowing or immobilizing enemies in the middle of a team fight is going to grant you a huge shield. You're getting health instead of ability haste. Great tank item, and also a really good support option, I think, for things like Galio, things like Gragas, maybe even things like Alistair potentially. So love this. I think it's a really cool item, and actually I think you're going to see it built more frequently, especially on tanky supports, but also maybe even see it on certain tanks in the Baron lane. You might see this on something like Malphite, for instance, you know. Hextech Mega Drive. Immobilizing an enemy champion reduces the current cooldown of your active item by 15%. This effect will trigger multiple times if an effect hits multiple enemy champions at once. Think big Alistair combos, think Rakan knockups or charms, think Nami waves, etc. You're actually going to get to cycle the cooldown of your active ability item pretty quickly if you can make CC happen at once, which is pretty cool. Gives you a payoff, and actually I think fulfills the power fantasy of this item a little bit more. So I really like that. Holebreaker, another thing that I'm really excited about. Suddenly split pushing might become a genuine option. Split pushing hasn't been a most viable option for players in wildrift, mainly due to our map being smaller than League PCs. So we're bringing Holebreaker to help with this and give fighters another way to play out their game. So if you're vibing in a lane with your minions friends and mowing down towers left and right as has been your dream, Holebreaker is now here to help you fulfill it. Builds from BF Sword and Jerome's Fist, you get 55 attack damage, 300 health, while no allied champions are within 1200 units gain 10 to 15 bonus armor and magic resistance, and deal 20% bonus damage against structures. Nearby allied siege minions and super minions gain bonus armor and bonus magic resistance. 10% bonus side and deal 200% bonus damage against structures. Bonus resistances provided by Holebreaker are removed immediately while allied champions are nearby. Yo. It's pretty good. Very excited to try this one out, because I actually just would love to have split pushing as a potential win condition. It gives you more agency as a Baron lane player. It means you don't have to always rotate to objective fights and just like have your team flame you because you haven't joined the team fight as a Fiora when you suck at team fighting. So, you know, I think like Divine Sunderer plus this is like a really nice way to like play out a laning phase, you know, and potentially look for a split push win condition. Whether it's viable or not remains to be seen. We'll have to see. There's so many item changes. This video is already going towards the hour mark. Solari Chargeblade. Goodness gracious, there's a lot going on. Okay, so upon an ability gathers radiance of up to 3 charges, which grant 25% bonus critical strike chance for up to 10 seconds. Using ability gathers radiance, which up to 3 charges, but no longer grants bonus critical strike chance. Basic attacks that critically strike expend a charge of radiance to deal slightly more magic damage now. So actually a decent amount more magic damage. And this damage can also critically strike. Okay, so it's not going to increase based on targets missing health, but it deals more damage, and this can now critically strike. Let's see how that plays out, because on paper, the item is still, I still think, pretty good. And I still think that, you know, realistically, you're going to pair it with, well, you're not going to get 50% critical strike from one item. You're not going to get 50% critical strike from one item. That's the difference now. So it's going to be a 25% critical strike item, but you obviously throw it into a crit build. Like for a Yasuo, it's not going to make a huge amount of difference. If anything, it's actually going to be more efficient because you go this item and then go Infinity Edge, and actually you've got 100% crit anyway, right? But now it just slots into. By the way, I still think this is going to be a great item for most of the people that already built Solari Chargeblade, and it may even end up being better overall. But the loss of 25% crit will definitely hurt the point in which it becomes a spike. But I think it's gonna end up being better late game. That's what kind of what I get at here. I think it's actually gonna end up being better late game. But it's gonna spike a little later into the game. That's basically what I'm saying. But yeah, TLDR, I think that it's gonna be a good item in the late game still, but it just requires a bit more crit to activate. But then, you know, I still think the Solari Chargeblade as like for casting based AD carries and casting based critical strike fighters is going to be really strong. So I still think it's going to be good. And specifically because things like Stormrazor are getting a buff. So you can go from Stormrazor into Solari Chargeblade, and it's like, it seems like a relatively cool item build path. Yeah, no shit, Stormrazor hasn't been the most desirable for marksman. It's been rubbish. Basically, it's now building out of BF Sword instead, and it's providing a decent amount more attack damage, and it's still keeping the attack speed and critical strike. So essentially, it's going to be 200 gold more expensive, which is, in my opinion, nothing, but you get a whole, like, 15 extra AD, which is pretty insane. So I actually think that Storm Razor is now going to be a really viable item for a lot of carries like Caitlyn. It's going to be a really viable item for something like Jhin, which is what I talked about before. I think this is going to be a great item now for Jhin, especially for the critical strike build path for Jhin. And anybody that would have traditionally wanted to use this item on PC, I think is now going to get much more viability out of it. Like, it's a lot of AD for just 200 gold. It's quite a lot of AD for 200 gold. So I think this is pretty cool. Yomo's is getting the Dead Man's plate adjustment. This is probably more impactful to me than Dead Man's plate. Mostly because those people that built Yomo's really benefited from the movement speed in terms of the way they look to engage fights and cross the map and stuff. So I think this is, especially for like junglers and mid laners like Zed and Lee Sin that use this more frequently, this will have more of an impact in my opinion than Dead Man's plate. Summoner spells. 60% decaying slow over the duration. The cooldown is coming down by 5 seconds. Nice, because I think that Exhaust was only being used in niche scenarios, and I think now it's going to become more of a combat summoner, which is pretty cool. Heal. New. Effects are increased by 100% on the most wounded ally nearby ally champion. Ally heal is 120 to 484, so just double of this with a movement speed of 40%. The base movement speed is going down to 20%, and the cooldown is going up by 10. TLDR, this is better. This is not so good for AD carries to take anymore. So, what I would say is that a lot of AD carries would take this, or they'd take barrier, and then the support would go heal. What I would say in this scenario now is that actually, unless you're running like a really aggressive support that's going to be taking the damage for you, this is now much more of a support spell, and AD carries will have to go either with Exhaust or with Barrier, which has kind of been the meta that's been evolving recently anyway. Ignite. Ignite has been slightly stronger, while also being extremely powerful in later stages of the game. So basically, you're getting slightly more damage out of Ignite earlier, but about 30 less damage in the late game. Which as a true damage ability can be relatively impactful. But actually, in my eyes, Ignite in the late game always felt more of like I'm shoving on this person to stop their healing rather than to really deal that 30 extra damage. Because, I think that in the grand scheme of things, 30 extra damage, not a huge deal breaker in my opinion in the late game. And I've always thought of it as a grievous wounds application, ability, rather than actually dealing the damage. And I actually think that buffing the early game is maybe more dangerous because that's just going to make it, more impactful at the stage of the game where I felt it actually had more impact. But hey, let's see how it plays out. Happy to have input on that as well. Smite. Champions whose damage mostly comes from auto attacks have been dominating the jungle in Wild Rift. We're taking away the bonus damage that Smite grants from auto attacks in order to maintain the power of Smite for ability-based junglers, while reducing the speed at which champions like Jax and Tryndamere power clear through the jungle. The minion penalty for taking Smite is also being extended an extra minute to reduce the effectiveness of strategies revolving around players clearing the jungle quickly, and then also taking lane to farm funnel legions onto a single player. I'm looking at you, Master Yi, Lulu mid players. Only increases ability damage. 10% is not a massive thing, but you will feel this impact for clear speed for things like for Jax and Lee Sin. Sorry if you're hearing my Slack notifications, it's because I'm still at work. 25% less gold and XP for killing. Yeah, fine. We've talked about it. Fair enough. It's a change designed to kind of reduce the power level of the clear speed of things like Tryndamere and Jax and even Lee Sin. Although Lee Sin does have a lot of abilities, so he probably is okay. My god, there's so many changes. I've talked for so long. There are so many changes. Powerful dragon buffs are intended to drive action in Wild Rift, but the level of power they are great. But at this level of power, they are greatly influencing the outcome of the game in early fights around the objective, are too crucial in deciding whether a team wins or loses. We are slightly reducing the power of each dragon buff to reduce the pressure players have to perform when fighting for it throughout the game and making it more viable to trade other objectives. Mountain Dragon. Gain 5%. Okay, so you're getting like 1% less max health shield. Mountain Dragons sucked anyway, so who cares? Cloud getting 1%. Well, to 2% if it's doubled out of combat movement speed debuff. Buff rather. Yeah, okay. Ocean Dragon, 7%. Okay, it's 1%. an increase. It's like 1%. These like they're minutia, absolute minutia, in my opinion, in terms of the changes that you're getting here. Is it going to move the needle? Like, is it going to move the needle? Probably not. They're all still going to be contested, I think. Elder Dragon. The buff for slaying Elder will grant a stronger version of the elemental buff. It's 100% stronger. The effect is increased by 33% for every other dragon your team has taken. Oh, but 25% for every other dragon your team has taken. And they are... Okay. Fair enough. I was just dancing around for no apparent reason. I'm trying to figure out what this actually means. Basically, the stacking increase effect from taking other dragons is being reduced, but the actual dragon itself is going to give a slightly more powerful effect. So, like, for Infernal, it's going to mean a bit more for Infernal, for, you know, Mounting Club, whatever. The actual dragon that turns up as Elder is going to be more powerful, but the effect for every other dragon taken... This doesn't make any sense. Wait a second. I don't know what this means. It's going to be more powerful if you take it by itself, but less powerful if you stack. Like it, maybe like turn out equivalent if you're stacking dragons. But like if you're taking it by itself and you don't have the dragons to back it up, it's going to be more powerful. If you have the dragons, it's probably going to work out relatively similar, if not what looks to be slightly worse overall. Okay, fair enough. Basically, Elder is now going to be slightly better if you haven't taken any dragons beforehand. But if you have been stacking up the dragons, Elder becomes a slightly less powerful win condition. There we go. Sorry, brain turned off for a minute there. Straightforward blurb on what this new rune does. Is that a leak? Have they accidentally leaked there is a new rune coming in another patch notes at some point? I don't know. Or is Baron Nashor becoming a rune? Baron Nashor is getting a HP increase. Players that take more than one shot of acid take 70% damage after the first shot. Acid pull deals more damage, and tentacle knockup deals more damage. Basically making Baron harder to take and deals more damage to people trying to take it. Objective is harder. Experience catch-up modifier. We're reducing the amount of catch-up experience in the game overall to slightly increase the ability to solo carry, since it will be easier to generate larger level leads. This will also reduce the power of various strategies that revolve around falling behind significantly to get big bonuses from catch-up experience. Who was doing that? I've never heard of that objective, but maybe there's something that's been floating around. Reduce the modifier on experience gained by players significantly ahead or behind the rest of the team. Players that are ahead will be penalized less, while players that are behind will be favored less. Feels a bit bad though if you've got an AFK that returns to the game later on. I don't know if there's something they can do about that, like know when there's an AFK that's returning to the game and not have the sort of penalty. We are redistributing turret gold rewards to favor the player actually taking the turret. This should reduce teams snowballing off events they did not participate in. Local gold going up, global gold going down. It makes a lot of sense. Added announcements, 900 first pick to champion select, so you know who's first pick. You'll automatically begin given smite if you're in the jungle. Added settling, like added a settling to automatically attack an enemy after casting abilities that empowered attacks, like Nasus' siphoning strike. Made some improvements to ally buff targeting to give players more control over their friendly tap casted abilities. Added a resource bar below Camille's health bar to indicate her passive's cooldown. I like that. That's nice. That's it. That is the patch. It's a long one. Let me know what you think. Pretty cool though. New items. We've all been asking for them. But I'm interested to see what you feel, how the game's going to shake out because of this. Very, very cool. Very, very cool. There we go. Done. Nearly an hour. Signing off. Excoundrel out.